Welcome to the Massive Change Show. I'm Justin Foster.
And I'm Dr. Virginia Lacayo. In each episode, we have conversation with leaders who are getting in some good trouble by challenging paradigms and shaking the system.
And after each conversation, the episode shifts to the second show, where Virginia and I chat about what we learned from the guest.
If you know of any leaders who will make a great guest, please introduce us.
And of course, if you enjoy the show, please like, share, and leave a review.
Thanks for listening.
In this episode, we are joined by Velvet Schmitz. Velvet is the CEO of Higher Better and the mayor of Rolling Hills Estates, California. After our conversation with Velvet, please tune in for the second show. And as always, please leave a like, comment, or share the episode. Welcome, Velvet. Thank you so much for carving time out of your day to have a conversation with us.
First of all, thank you. I'm honored to be invited and to be here and thrilled to have conversation with the two of you. I often enjoy our conversations, so what a treat.
It's going to be
awesome.
fun.
So before we get into the big three, it will be fun. Before we get into the big three questions that that we ask all of our guests, we would love to know a little bit about your journey, not so much your bio, but how'd you get here? I think you might be the only CEO that I know, at least, that's also a mayor. So, that's kind of part of that very interesting story that you have.
We're letting out all of the secrets. Okay. Well, I think what I'd like to share is something that's pretty impactful in my life, which is that I was raised by a single mother. And the reason that's impactful is for those of us who were raised by a single mother, the idea of mother, father, provider, friend, disciplinarian all meld into one. And my mother, throughout her life, had to make incredibly difficult choices. And she made them. She not only made the choices, but because of the choices she made, she influenced how I grew up. So I've lived most of my life, and now I've realized the majority of it in Los Angeles. I grew up here. It shaped me in a lot of different ways. I grew up in a very Americana type community where you had horses and orange groves. I used to hike with my grandpa to an open field where there was berries. And I had a real idyllic sort of childhood juxtaposed with my mother was the only single parent at my elementary school. We had to take care of ourselves sometimes because we had incredible child-giving individuals. And of course, I grew up in the 80s, which was tumultuous in Los Angeles. I was in high school during the LA riots. I grew up on a lot of hip hop and understood the base of those lyrics. And I give you all that because I am a patchwork quilt of all of those things. My mother was an immigrant, or is, she's still alive. And I think it really helped to shape who I am. I am very American and I am very not American. There are many things in my life that culturally are, much like apple pie and baseball, and there's a lot of things that aren't. And so I think all of those things and that quilt of different threads has made me who I am, someone who really, really, truly wants to enjoy every moment of this awesome life we've been given, someone who looks like me, so I'm not a typical, I like to say I'm ethnically ambiguous, so it's interesting. The upside of that is a lot of people see themselves in me. The downside of that is that I didn't look like anyone, and I was never white enough, I was never brown enough, I was never enough because I looked like this. And so all of those things have informed who I am. And now in my wiser, older years, not because I'm so wise, but more because I'm experienced, I have come to love every aspect of everything I just shared.
I love that story. I love the story. And why? I mean, I love the story and I feel identified, and it's kind of reaffirming for me because I'm an immigrant and I was a single mom for 11 years of the 14 years that my son has until Justin. So it's very reaffirming what you share. I just want one more question. Is like, why mayor? Why you run for it? I
Mhm.
mean, you are already very successful. You had your hands full with your company and doing all the changes, because we've been talking before, and you have a very unique perspective of what a leader should be. And as a woman leader, you're leading in a completely different way, and it's very revolutionary in many ways. And on top of that, you run for office. So how that happened?
Well, I was always raised with two things: you give of your treasure or you give of your time. And so when I was growing up, we volunteered a lot. We volunteered throughout Los Angeles, spent a lot of time at the LA Mission, did a lot of things. So when I came out, it was so interesting. I had graduated, maybe it was the day I graduated or the day after. And my husband's grandfather said to me, "How are you going to give back to the university?" And I said, "Grampy, I have zero money. What are you talking about?" And he said, "Velvet, whatever you have a job, you have a career, even if it's $1, you're giving back." And what's interesting is even my family talked about you give of your time, you give of your treasure. At that point, he was my boyfriend. His family talked about giving of time and treasure. And it sort of all always was ingrained in me. And so I have volunteered throughout my life in every kind of organization. And when I moved to this beautiful community, one, it reminded me of my childhood, and I thought, how did they do this? How did they preserve? Because the city that I grew up in doesn't look the way it did. There's no more strawberry fields. There's a mall now where that used to be. Like, so many things have changed. But in Rolling Hills Estates, we have trails, we have open space, we have a commercial area. So it was really very reminiscent of my childhood. And I thought, I need to learn. I need to learn how they're protecting this. I need to learn what they're doing. And I was a political science major in college, but I never thought I would run for office. I went in as molecular and cell biology. Well, that's a whole other topic for a whole other podcast. But I decided to volunteer, and I started out on our environmental advisory committee, and I was hooked. I was hooked with there's all these people who give of their time. You volunteer for this city, and there's policy and there's problem solving. And so I served on committees throughout the city. I was elected chair of those committees. And 8 years ago, I decided uh, I can do this. I can run for office. And back to your original comment, Virginia, I also knew that I would do it differently. I lead in a way that I think more of us are coming to this position. There's more of us out there. It was less known years ago. I think the pandemic catapulted us a little bit more forward, but I knew that the strengths that I have with empathy, with compassion, with amplifying, with raising was the kind of leader that is needed. And I was bold enough to think that I had those skills, and so I ran for office, and here I sit uh, as council member and mayor.
That's awesome. One of my favorite branding projects I did, this was about 10 years ago, is I helped the mayor of the fourth largest city in Idaho, Meridian, run for reelection. And it was, I actually did all the kind of almost like I was like the CMO of the campaign. I wasn't the campaign manager. I did all the messaging and everything, things that I do for all brands, but it was just for Mayor Tammy. And it was right at that era, like the Tea Party era, and Idaho's a very red state. And Mayor Tammy was a Republican, but she was more like a, reasonable one. And so it was a fun thing. We did a whole campaign on her third term when she won, where we said her opponent was the couch. That's what we did. So that was the image that we said, because she had 3 other people running against her. They were not a threat. What the threat was is if you actually give a shit about the city, you got to get off your couch and go vote. And she won that race by the largest margin of her 3 terms. So anyway, just talking shop about that. It was
And
just
I
a
love
fun
that
memory.
you said that is the opponent. We have Northern California votes at higher rates than Southern California, and I always tell people that's the no vote. But I love your analogy about the couch. I'm going to use that. I'll give you credit.
It's all
But I'll
yours,
use
of
it.
course. Yeah, please do.
Okay, let's start with the first question that we ask our guest. in the show, and you're such an inspiration. I'm really looking forward to hear your answers to these questions. So the first question is, what is your big idea that is going to piss off a lot of powerful people?
So one of the things I hope is that rather than go to anger, powerful people stop and hear my answer so that they too can reflect, because I think we have more alike and we are more in common than we think. And that's leading as my authentic self. And I think it angers people because I grew up, right? So I just told you about the beautiful place that I grew up in, but I grew up in America as a woman. And if I ever had aspirations of being a leader, a CEO of anything really, then I had to be a badass. I had to cut throats. I had to climb by any means necessary. And I didn't. I didn't choose to cut people down. I didn't choose to be antagonistic. I didn't choose the hard path of it has to be this way. I chose to envelop myself in I'm gushy. I love fiercely. I love intensely. And I love my name's Velvet, right? It invokes softness. And oftentimes as women we're told that soft, no, you can't do that. You can't be emotional. You can't all these should, would, could. And I'm standing here showing, living, modeling no, you can be soft. You can be compassionate. When you are sad, you can cry. You can tell somebody in a very respectful and compassionate way, I'm very angry with you. I'm not satisfied with what just happened. We can go back and have difficult conversations, all while respecting one another and building the relationship rather than break it. And so I do think there's an uneasiness when I lead the way that I lead. People are like, well, what are you doing? Then Ken, how aren't you causing liability? And the other thing, I am quick to apologize. First and foremost, I am screwing things up left, right, and center. Some I'm aware of, some I don't even know, but I know I'm screwing things up. It doesn't cost me anything to quickly say, oh, I'm so sorry. There is no moment where if I said something and I offended someone, why not? What is it if I just say, gosh, I think I just offended you. I'm so sorry if I did. Can we stop and recalibrate? I'm very sorry for doing that. The apologetic, we are fallible. We do these things. And so all of the ways in which I have chosen to lead and how I show up, I've been told that's not what you do. That's not how you do it. And I beg to differ.
Yeah. Kind of a follow-up to that, because you are the CEO of Hire Better, which is a recruiting firm, very unique kind of recruiting firm. But that industry is not necessarily known for its empathy. There's this that the pressure to get butts in seats, and especially with you guys doing executive search, the pressure to you kind of are like NFL scouts. If if you get the wrong draft pick, it can affect the team for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So in that kind of linear, maybe at times rigid and environment of recruiting, how do other leaders, like your clients in particular, or strategic partners, respond to that kind of leadership, to that more empathetic, in many ways intersectional, because you're bringing in all the various components? How are they responding to that?
So I have to say, we are all scaffolded and supported and held by others. And it would be just, I have to do, in all fairness, our founder, Kurt Wilkin, is the heart and soul. And Kurt has created the space, the expectation, and is a huge proponent of empathy, of compassion, of changing the way that this whole industry is seen for that very reason. His mantra is that we are human to human, and that is how we choose to behave. What's interesting is that also, I wish I was a physics major in college, but full disclosure, I could not keep up with the math. That was not my jam, and so I couldn't be, but I love physics. I love the concepts and the ideas. So energy is not created or destroyed, it's just transferred. That commitment that Kurt has to this, the compassion, the heart that he brings is translated throughout what we do. And we've decided to take that to that next level. So whether we're talking to a client or a candidate or each other as team members or our partners, we believe that everybody deserves the compassion, the respect, the space as the professional, as the human being that they are. And so in the end, we attract like things. And for those companies who we help along the journey with honing in on their mission, you want someone who aligns with your mission. You want someone who aligns with your values. Those are the kind of people that you want to attract. And the opposite is true. Those that do not align, you want to repel. And so we really work on, isn't it great that if you are a process person who needs details, there are entities out there who have that. There are companies who are very process oriented, who are very detailed, and you would thrive in that environment. How awesome. And then there are companies that are fly by the seat of your pants, right? Like what's going to happen at 8:30 is not what you're going to do at 12:30 or 3:30. And you're like, that's awesome. Sign me up. Those are the kinds of things that when you look at a human for who that human is, when you celebrate the innate qualities that they come with to this entire existence, and then you align that, I mean, like how awesome is that? And so we have chosen to take that road. We could do lots of things with numbers. And we use technology. We use AI. We do different things as a firm, but we don't lose sight of what's important. So to use technology to be more efficient, absolutely. To have a conversation with a human, that's the other human. To be able to notice an inflection in someone's voice when they talk about something, to have behavioral interviewing, to really be able to represent. So entity X wants something and Virginia has all those qualities and we know that can match. What a beautiful thing to bring together, to have her thrive, to have them thrive. And then you're watching these companies just grow because you have just done that alignment. And so hopefully that is what's felt by our partners, by our clients, by our candidates. That's what we want to impart.
Awesome.
I think I just want to make a comment about the first part of your answer when you were talking about leading with compassion and love and being vulnerable. And vulnerability, I mean, Brené Brown was very clear about that. That is really a strength. It's not about being fragile. It's the opposite. And one of the things that I coach my clients on, and is part of the Indomable mindset that I develop as a program, is the ego mastery. And the ego mastery is really about how you are capable. And very few people, I know very few, especially at the leadership position, very few people that actually know how to feel their feelings. Mm-hmm. Just feel them and express them and not being afraid of them. And I keep sharing and telling and coaching and teaching about when you're afraid of a feeling, or there is a feeling, an emotion that you cannot control, you cannot manage, you're not capable of just feeling it and accepting it and embrace it, that emotion not only controls you, but it's also used by others to control you. So think about, the traditional male approach to leadership that you're challenging, that is very, enduring, and I don't show emotions, and I'm tough, and I don't laugh, and I don't cry, and I don't feel anything, like I'm a machine or I'm just a brain. And then they don't know what to do with anger, with frustration, with sadness, with deception, with self-doubt, with lack of confidence, and all those emotions that are, boiling inside are being perceived by their detractors in some ways and use that to manipulate that person. So how strong a leader can be that is vulnerable, is open to be manipulated by others because doesn't know and doesn't embrace their own feelings. So the fact that you're doing it not only models a different kind of leadership that is more human centered, but it also models a leadership that is strong, that is true, that is authentic, is strong, and is the kind of leader that can lead thinking of the well-being of the community because it doesn't feel the need to protect themselves all the time. So
Gosh, I
kudos for
mean,
that.
first of all, your clients are very fortunate that you're coaching them. I have about $250,000 in therapy that has been invested in me, and so let's. I want to put into perspective that I wasn't born this way, right? I mean, I came with all of the things that we all come with, and then I also experience a lot of the other things that mess us all up, and I think that what I chose to do is through various tragedies in my life, I chose to be broken down and to rebuild. I chose to feel those things. I chose to have that vulnerability. And, it could have gone another way, right? I could have hardened. I could have, there are other things that could occur. And so I would say, for all of that to happen, we have to be willing to do the work. We have to be willing to be in the uncomfortable space and to sometimes feel like, will I ever get out of this? Am I going to get over? And reach out for help. I did not do the work by myself. I have been coached. I have been through many therapies, every modality, in fact. I have teachers, I have mentors. There has been the imprint. I mean, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing? I bet if every person who coached me, was my therapist, was my mentor, put their thumbprint, it would be my whole existence because I am a culmination of all of that, of every ounce of coaching and therapy and help that those people gave to me. And so that we don't do this work alone, and it's not happenstance. We arrive because there are people like the change and effect you're having on your clients that work is something, and that this stuff is born out of it. So
Yeah. So that leads to the second question, Velvet, that we ask our guests, and you're a CEO of a company, so be as transparent as you feel comfortable. But what are some of your biggest challenges with as you embody what it means to be a heart-based leader? What challenges do you face in doing that?
so many. So first of all, so many. Um, you know, One of the things that is very difficult to create, but very easily to break, is trust. And corporate America is not built on trust. We don't create these foundations and these cultures of like, come, be open, be honest, we'll take care of you. It's like at every turn, if people feel that they've been open and honest, they feel like they've got burned. And we have a lot to overcome when it comes to how business is run. And so that it's a challenge. It's a challenge to get people to believe that there is a safe space, that you are leading in a way, and for them to then want to join and be as vulnerable. The other challenge too is that I answer to a board, I answer to investors. This higher better was not created because we altruistically feel good about people. It is a business. And so, yes, there's this wonderful component of how we choose to lead in what we're doing, but we have to make money. And so oftentimes within the making money, there's a little bit lost in that you can have the overwhelm of fear. I mean, talk about not sitting in that uncomfortableness. If you're not willing to embrace those things, like I am worried about next quarter, I'm worried about what the numbers are going to look like, you get stuck in that loop and you're not really dealing with it, but it's ever present, and then it becomes an issue. And so there are bottom lines that need to be met. And I think, you know, one of the challenges is that we've been taught that all of this heart-based leading, all of this compassion does not match with the bottom line. And so all of a sudden, right, we had people doing sustainability and conscious leading and conscious investing, and everyone thought, well, how is that going to work? Imagine that. It actually makes money. Convincing people of that, convincing people that it's good to invest in our environment, that it's good to have regenerative farming practices, that it's good to treat people like humans, and then to have it show up and be profitable.
Yes, preach that. I have commented this publicly frequently that if you need to know the ROI of treating someone with kindness, making them feel safe, accepting who they are, if you need an ROI for that, you're just an asshole. It's not like it's and I'm not saying there isn't an ROI, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard CEOs or business people say this ROI on kindness. I also I actually posted this earlier today, but that I said, if you're anti-DEI, please be very vocal about it. So the rest of us know who will be irrelevant in a couple of years. Because this is what we are calling equity-based transformation. That's what this is that we went through the digital transformation. Now it's equity-based transformation. And that kindness, compassion, empathy, accountability, all of that stuff it's the way it needs to be done. Every business is in the people business now. Most just suck at it. So I think, that's where, can you imagine this though, Velvet, that just a few years ago, and we're sort of the same age, I think, in American business, maybe 10 years ago, if you had a heart as a CEO, you had to pretend like you didn't. And now the opposite is true. If you don't have a heart, you got to pretend like you do that's what we call woke washing. And that you are living heart first as a CEO is very inspiring.
Well, first, that's gracious. Thank you. And again, I want to make sure that all of the people who helped shape me get the credit, because I don't know that I was malleable clay. I think I might have been a tough go at it. And so I'm grateful for all of their coaching and persistence. I will tell you that it's so interesting to me, the power of vernacular and what people turn things into, right? Because there's such a tension around the term DEI. And there are such polarities being developed and so many things that it almost feels like we're just hungry to fight because we want to fight, not because the fight is worth having. But if you think about, if I posed the same exact question with different vernacular, like, would you like a team around you who has a different lens on the very thing that you're all looking at, and who is informed by their background, by their experiences, by the life that they led, and then they chose to opine based on those things, and all of you around the table had different opinions and saw something different because of all of that? Would you want that?
Yeah.
Who? I mean, right? That's incredible.
But I honestly, maybe I'm a 53-year-old cynic now, but I honestly don't know it's that many people. Because to what Virginia said earlier, if you're disconnected from your emotions, from your own heart, you don't give a shit about that stuff. You just got to give it lip service. So what's encouraging and what we built massive around is this idea that there are more and more conscious CEOs. And one of the rules of consciousness is when you elevate your consciousness, it always comes with a human-centric social justice component. It's not optional. So anyway.
I will add something else too. Is like, I think one of our main challenges as new leaders, in a way, I mean, with a new paradigm of leadership, is to break the fake dichotomy that we have in our mindset, that is everything is either you're a good person and you're kind, or you're effective and profitable and all those things. I mean, that dichotomy that we have is totally made up, because when you think from a complexity science perspective, you think in nature, you think in the universe. Very few things are either or. Most things in life and in nature are both and. And so I think that our challenge is to go back to that and say, like, let's break this made up idea that things are black and white, and let's go see what actually happens in reality, and show them and show the world that actually everything can be both and that our challenge as leaders and our challenge as humans is to create the safety and the trust, as you said, to be creative about, is not can we make it? The question is like, how we gonna make it work? How we gonna make, instead of saying like, should we be kind or should we grow and be profitable? The question really is how are gonna be kind and grow and be profitable at the same time, and the question is like that. So
I
we need to
also
ask
think,
that
though,
kind of question.
Virginia, that the mentality of and is something that was lost. We became an or society, and it's really an and, because most things are yes and. And if you even switch a little bit, right, and just notice our own personal vocabulary, I have switched completely from a no or vocabulary mentality to a yes and. Yes, and I agree with this part, but that yes, and that starts to change. I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do, and that's revolutionary, which is become and that my word for 24 is abundance. And I am using abundance, and even in that, there is abundance. You don't have to trade off. It's an
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of it. Spot on.
Okay, let's move on to the third question because we're trying to get the best out of your time. So the third question is, what is the impact that you want to make?
That's such a big question. And perhaps it's me putting more weight on it because I was thinking of legacy and a couple of days ago, and I thought, that's a big term. Um, and I'm not quite there. What I know to be true and why I was put on this earth and this time in this existence is I I want people to feel seen and heard. I would like them to walk away from interactions with me saying, man, I really felt heard in that conversation. I really felt seen. I think that we all come with such incredible gifts, and some of us keep them because we've had wonderful idyllic existence and they get nurtured and we're proud of them and they go, and others we have to sort of dig through a little bit of the muck that gets put on us to get to that place. But everybody is just such a fascinating sum of experiences and who they are. And all of us at some point were 3 and 4 years old trying to figure it out. And all of us are these incredible creatures. And I, I really want that impact to be that people feel seen, they feel heard, and that I will feel successful in my life if, someday someone decides to have a memorial service after I'm gone and they talk about what was the impact. The impact is that I felt seen and heard by her.
Yeah. And what comes to me for that, and I love your humility because it's probably going to be a lot bigger than that. But what comes to me is I think it was Peter Drucker that said, leaders, leaders create leaders. And the real legacy is the people coming up that you're mentoring, and that they will find this part in them, because I want to emphasize that not necessarily anyone told you how to do this. What they did, probably, whether it was a therapist, a coach, a mentor, was just had you go inward to find this part in you. And that's really what leadership is. Like, really, when it's at the end of the day, if you want to have the right to say, follow me, you have to have that deep connection with yourself. And if you could teach people to do that, that will have such an echo effect into this whole, like, this phase that we're in that will probably last over the next 100 some years of equity-based transformation. It's going to require more Velvets out there, and that's a huge impact. So
Careful what you ask for. I've heard I'm a lot to handle. There's
well,
nothing like humility from your children. They'll tell you exactly what they think, which is awesome.
yes, that's true. Yes. As John Mulaney said, there's nothing meaner than a 14-year-old. So
Oh, that's funny. I'm fortunate.
yeah.
I have two young women that I've raised, and what I've really appreciated is their candor with me in moments that
Yeah.
I haven't shown up as my highest self. the
Yeah.
way that they have compassionately said, "Lady, you suck." That's been really awesome.
There you go. They're already doing that. So,
Oh yeah.
well, we'll put links to Hire Better and the other things, that other ways to find you. But what is something that, if someone's listening to this and they want to support you in some way, because it can be kind of lonely out there leading this way, what's your ask of other people?
Gosh, I'm a lifelong learner and I love new ideas. Please connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn, Velvet Schmitz. Um, I also, I have to tell you that I'm incredibly fiercely proud of the team that is Hire Better. And so if you ever have a need for recruitment, we're doing some really cool things. And yes, our tradition is executive, and we've done so much more to help people with hiring. So please have a look at what we have to offer. If we align, if that's something that speaks to people, we'd love to be in partnership with you and help do that. And I would say the biggest ask that I could have is, if we all took some time to be responsible for ourselves, if we
Hmm.
took the time to invest, to love ourselves, to do the work, imagine what could happen. And so I ask, you are worth it. You deserve time to develop yourself. You deserve attention. Take that, do it. We are all the better for it when you do.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for doing this with us. It was an awesome conversation.
Such a pleasure. I love talking to you. I could do it for hours. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the work that you're doing too. You are amplifying such important messages. You are bringing to the table conversations that need to be had, and so thank you for the work that you're doing and you continue to do.
Thank you so much. All right. Thanks, Velvet. So now we shift to the second part of the show. I feel like we need some sort of fancy name for this part of the show, because I said analysis, but that doesn't seem, it's not
It's
just
not
analysis.
analysis. No, it's not. We're
So
not going to
I'm a
analyze
I'm a
really.
branding guy. Why can't I come up with a name for this part of the show?
Well, for next show, I'm sure we're going to have
Yeah,
one.
right.
But for now, it's just, let's say, let's, what will be the discussion that you have after a great movie? You know.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that is, right.
I love her. I love what she does and what she stands for. I think that we really need, she's an example of a women executive leader that is making a huge impact. I mean, not only in the corporate sector, but also now in the public sector as a mayor. Is really impressive that that she ran for that and that she
Mhm.
won. I'm not surprised at all. I think that their community, her community is going to benefit a lot. And I think that she's bringing to both fields or both sectors through her leadership. She's bringing concept and ideas through her behavior. I mean, by modeling, that are gonna spark conversations about what kind of leadership we need now in our society. And just to mention a few, I mean, the ego mastery, the capacity of being truly vulnerable. And again, vulnerability is not about, oh, this is my heart, please don't hurt it. It's not about being weak. It's not about being fragile. It's the opposite. It's like being so open and so honest and embrace and accept so well who you are and what are your flaws and where you're still learning and growing and the mistakes that you make, then nobody has anything against you. Nobody can hurt you because you were already there. You were the first one there. So that is also being vulnerable, is saying like, yeah, I know that this is who I am and I know that I'm making mistakes. I have no problem apologizing for that. I'm still learning. I will not make them again once I'm aware of that. And I know I have this and this and this things to grow, and I still have some bias. I'm working on it. When you go ahead of the rest of the world because you know yourself, because you have done the work, and you go ahead and say, like, this is me, I have nothing to hide, people have nothing against you, really. It's really hard. And so by her behaving that way every day in her business and in public, that is showing a different and being effective, also showing that you can be vulnerable and be highly effective and assertive and have clear, healthy boundaries. That shows the kind of leadership that is honest, authentic, effective, and that brings everybody to grow with her. That's the kind of leadership that we need, and having those role models are extremely necessary right now.
Yeah. Yeah. She kind of reminds me of Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, because there's something with these modern American women leaders, that when they are connected to their hearts, there's this, it's kind of like graciousness, but with teeth, like there is an element of that kind of toughness that's heart-based toughness that's different than ego-based, what's perceived toughness, because it goes to something you teach our clients, which is the emotions that you can't control are the ones being used to control you. So if you're connected to your own heart and you've mastered your own ego, there's nothing for people to get their hooks into. I mean, they can be as critical as they want, but they can't get their hooks into you. And you could call that like graciousness, I guess, but there's just something very unique about that, especially with women leaders. The other thing that struck me too is about Velvet and like her approach is how well she understood. Like, I loved her answer to our provocative first question about pissing people off. And she kind of softly deflected that and says, well, let's see what we can, she took it another direction. And I think that's profound, of this idea that she truly believes that you can win with kindness. That's something I still struggle with, that to me, there's a line. You've seen it with certain people. There's a line. And once you crossed it, you've gone from being someone I'm trying to convince to someone I'm trying to defeat. So I admire that belief, that sort of operational faith and kindness and leading from the heart.
I agree with you, and I agree with her that you don't need to be necessarily violent or confrontational or attack people necessarily when you want to achieve something. But as I keep saying, and I will keep saying forever, there is a truth about systemic change and systems change. It's like when you fight the system fights back. And
Right.
what I mean by the system fights back is that the system is designed in a way that privilege and give power to certain groups. And when you challenge those privilege and you challenge those, the inequity of the power distribution and the power dynamics, when you challenge them, somebody gets affected. Somebody meaning not just the individuals, but sectors and groups are going to get affected by that. And they're going to fight back because nobody wants to give away the power that they have and the privilege that they have, especially if they always had it. And they might get pissed off, but that means it's always a good sign, actually, when even if temporarily they get pissed off and mad at you because you're challenging the fundamentals of their privilege. Eventually, with kindness and with respect and with open dialogue, they will see the benefit of a different way. And again, is not necessarily either or, is both and. I mean, how can we both win? How can we both be, enjoy this privilege and enjoy this? Or how can we make this not a privilege anymore, but a right, something that everybody can enjoy? But for a moment, if you really want to make important, significant changes in the system and transform society the way it is, you're going to have to fight the system, and the system will fight back. And that's what tells you really that you're doing a good job. If
Right.
you have no resistance of any kind in the work that you're doing, you're just doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. Or in the best case scenario, you're doing good things within a system that allows you to do good things because they're not threatening. And that's what
Right.
happened with some of some of the programs and initiatives that corporations and nonprofit organizations and government have about, social justice initiative, that if the system is not being threatened by it, is not being shaken, then the system is allowing it because
Right.
it's not really transformational. So the pissing off groups or systems is really an indicator that you're in the right path, that you're actually shaking things up. And that's what we need.
Yeah. Well, my final kind of thought on that conversation is I've had the privilege of knowing Velvet before she was the CEO, when she was still a senior leader at Higher Better, but she wasn't the CEO. She's the same person that she was. And this is a lesson here as a reminder, is that you become the person through doing the work. You become the person that you're fully capable of being, and then the titles come. You don't get the title and then become the title. That's what the ego does. And I think that's such an important nuance here. Is if you're listening to this and you're not a CEO yet, but you aspire to be a CEO, you got to start doing, if you haven't done it already, your trauma integration now, your consciousness work now. You got to do it now, because by the time you get there, what will differentiate you along the way to being a CEO will be obviously performance, but it will be how you treat people, starting with yourself. And then when you get into that role, the only difference is now you've got more power and to change things, which is, again, our premise of change used to come only from the bottom up, and now it's coming from top down and bottom up to create this moment in history. So those are my final thoughts. How about you?
Yeah, it cannot be more true now that we have technology and we have artificial intelligence doing a lot of the work that humans used to be. Now more than ever, all the things that I'm gonna, I'm gonna get to that position because I'm great with numbers, because I know how to put together formulas, because I know how to give instructions and directions. A computer can do that now. I mean, right now, what is mostly demanded from leaders is to lead humans, is to lead. We lead people. We don't lead machines. We don't lead computers. We lead complex human beings. And that's something that AI will never replace us in doing. So what we need to learn the most is how to become good human leaders. And that starts by learning how to lead yourself first, but also to lead other humans. And it takes some skills. It's something that we are not born, and we are not taught that in a school or college or anything. The opposite, actually.
Right.
So yes, that's something that they need to start working on. And when one last thing is, like when Velveth mentioned about the issue of trust, I do believe that trust is the blood of an organization. I mean, where there is no trust, you start to see atrophies. I mean, there are parts that actually get congrenated somehow, and and they start getting really bad. So trust is absolutely essential, and it's not about just because. It's also because I want people to trust me and to trust each other because it's the right thing and because it feels good and because it's safe. It's also for the sake of the organization. You need to build trust. But there is still this myth that is up to the leader to build the trust within the organization. And that's not possible. You cannot, as a leader, make somebody else feel anything, including trust. You cannot make them trust you. You cannot make them trust each other. But what you can do, if you learn complexity-based leadership skills, what you can do is how to create the conditions and the structures, what we used to call liberating structures, the structures that allow people to exchange, to create dialogues, to build that trust with each other in a safe environment that is designed for that purpose. So it doesn't happen just because you put people in a room and you say, like, now talk to each other. You have to really intentionally decide the structures of interaction between people so that trust start being built, building. And the same with you as one of them, not because you have no matter your position, trust is something that you learn and you build in interactions, not by command. But that is
Right.
something, the good news is something that can be done and has been done for many, many years now through, all the complexity science experts know a lot about how to create those conditions within an organization to build the trust. And trust is essential for innovation, is essential because it's essential for experimentation and failure, and therefore for really breakthroughs and innovation, and therefore is essential for growth beyond being the right thing to do in an organization. So yeah, those are
Awesome.
other challenges.
Great second conversation. Maybe that's what we should call it, the second conversation.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't know.
good.
Yeah, maybe. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.